Okay, we're back for another segment of the GT185. So what we're going to do here is we're going to inventory all of the bolts. And this is an example. So I pull the parts out of the bag that go to the kickstand. And then I write down how many pieces and what they're for. Then I take a picture. So once I've got all that done, take the pieces and drop them in the vibrating cleaner. I had put, you can see it in this jug, the calcium and lime, the green bottles that you saw earlier. So what happened was I lifted up the lid in this at about an hour and a half, and oh my God, they were beautiful. They were silver. And I go, well, why not let it go the typical 4 hours, 5 hours? It'll just get better. Well, what happened was they turned black. Look at the springs. Now they're better because I put them in water, and maybe the water is having a chance to clean some, maybe it's a film of that, I don't know. But you can see the yellowing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them back in here with just the medium. I'm going to throw in maybe a gallon or two of water, where it'll be a much thinner. There's enough of it around the rocks, that calcium and lime stuff around the rocks here, the green triangles, to actually make it somewhat of a solution anyway. But I'm going to try that first with a little bit of purple power and give it an hour and see if it shines them and brightens them up, because that's what I'm after before I put them into the plating. So far, the only thing I can figure out is these, you can see how shiny these are. These still have the zinc plating. And I think these don't. I think, or a majority of it is been taken off by that cleanser, the CLR, the calcium rust additive or whatever I put in there. So I think what was going on is, at first, for the first hour, it was polishing and removing rust and removing oil and grime. And then they looked like this, because this is about what I saw when I lifted the lid on the majority of all these after an hour and a half. And I figure, well, an hour and a half, give it 4 hours, give it the true 4 hours. And then it went from this to this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the engine bolts, and they've got plenty of plating still left on them because they're covered inside the case. And then on the ends, there's plenty of rust and grime. So I'm going to put them in for an hour and a half, and then I'm going to see what the difference is. And I'm going to back off on the strength of the calcium rust eater. Also, the fluid, the calcium rust degreaser, it separated overnight, and all the milky stuff went to the bottom. So I'm assuming the clear stuff in the top is what I'm going to put back in. So I'm cleaning up all of the stuff. I'm going to get everything back to like a baseline, and I'm going to add a lot less of that calcium rust remover. All right, all the medium is cleaned and rinsed of all that goo, and now I'm going to put in a very limited amount of the calcium and lime remover. And it looks really clear. Let's try that. And a little bit of water. Bring it up to where you can just see the water kind of pooling. I'm not, I'm just experimenting, so that just seems like the place for the water line to be. Now let's add the bolts. And in go the bolts. Let's turn it on for an hour and a half. All right, let's turn it off and see. It's been an hour and a half. A little foam. And let's see if we can find a bolt. So, I think it's got them clean. And I can see pitting in the, let's see if I got a washer here. It's nice and clean. And it's not black. But you see, there's the plating. And that's got the plating off. Now, I don't know if that's really that bad because we're going to replate it. It's gotten this pretty darn clean. And I wouldn't be afraid to just pop this in to the first heated bath. But these are definitely brighter than when I had them on there for 4 hours. I mean, they really turned black. So I like this better. So, I could have just picked up a piece after an hour and a half on the earlier batch, and it just was shiny because it had like more plating on it. But this is all good. This is all good. There's nothing wrong with this. And the question is will this completely plate and get bright without wire wheeling? Because if I don't have to wire wheel, if I can just do this, it's a really big time saver. But I remember this is rusty, black and rusty, so yeah, I'm liking it. I think I'll get all the parts out of here and then go to plating with these bolts first. And here is my plating system. So it consists of a degreaser bath, and you can see the hot plate underneath, and you can see the steam coming off of it. We got to get that up to about 160, 180 degrees. Then what we'll do is we'll dip. What you do is you wrap copper wire just out of, I don't know, 15 gauge or whatever you call it, 12 gauge, just Romex wire, just strip it down and just take the copper out. And then you put a little hook on it. So you basically lay it in the degreaser for, I don't know, I've been doing it for about 20 minutes, but it says 5 or 6 minutes on it. So maybe I was doing that a little bit long. And then once it comes out of that, then you rinse it in the degreaser rinse, which is nothing but distilled water. And then you lay it across with this hook. You lay it across the copper tubing and let the bolt lie in the bath down there. So what you have is you've got a power source that takes your power source here takes your electricity, puts it in to these plates. And then there's also a jumper wire that goes from here over to this other plate. And so you've got both plates energized with positive electricity. And then you've got this copper tube across the bottom or top that has the negative connected to it. And so you turn this on. This is all a Caswell system. Everything here is all Caswell, and it's called the CopyCAD. And CopyCAD, that was very confusing to me on the website. CopyCAD is basically a zinc coating system, and the only difference is they do something to make it duller if you want cadmium plating. So these plates might have a little something in them. So in order to make it a zinc plating, which is basically what it is, it's really zinc plating that's a little dulled for cadmium. But they should really specify that. A zinc plating kit should just be called a zinc plating kit. But to make it a zinc plating, you add the zinc brightener. So if you want this system, you order the CopyCAD system, which has the degreaser. It has the juice here, that the bath that the plates sit in, and it has your chemicals, the zinc brightener, and a couple other things, but really that's about it, really. And then if you have your own power supply, that's great, but if you don't, you order their Caswell power supply. So again, dip it in here, get them all clean, put them in the bath, 10, 20 minutes, depending on how many you got in there and how much energy you, and that's something I'll get into later on, but you have to play with the amount of current. And it's not a big deal. This is really easy if you want to do it. It just takes a little time to get the hang of it. And really the hang of it is nothing more than how clean do you really have to get the bolts, and how long do you leave it in the bath, and how long depends on how much energy that you put in. And this is very easy to adjust. You've got current, and you've got your voltage. And so you just turn this on. Maybe I don't have it plugged in yet. So anyhow, we'll work on that. So then the second step is, once you've got it plated, then you dip it into the blue or yellow chromate and then rinse. So it's pretty simple. You go degreaser into this bath with the electrical current, and then you rinse that in I call it the Zinc Rinse. So you've got the degreaser rinse, the Zinc Rinse, and then once it comes out of the bath there, then you acid etch it and acid rinse it. Now, I could be wrong. I'm going to check in that, and I'm going to do the video right through the steps while I'm doing the bolts. So that's pretty much a rundown of the Caswell system. So as soon as this gets hot enough, we'll dip it into the degreaser. I'm going to leave this on long enough for you to pause and look. But basically what this sheet is out of the beautiful book that the Caswell people give you with the kit. So basically, the surface preparation is either a light buff for a bright zinc look, or bead blast for a cadmium look. And a bead blast is much duller going in. So, and then you go to degreasing. And like I said, it says 5 minutes immersion. And it's 140 to 200 degrees. Then you rinse in distilled water. This is called a break test. Water break, it just, I don't know. You know, if the water doesn't, if it beads up, then it's got some oil on it. So calculate the surface area, whatever. Then you go into the muriatic. It's a 5% muriatic solution. So you just have to figure out online. There's a 5% solution calculator for whatever. 2 gallons of water is what's in those tubs. Those are two gallon buckets. The tank makeup. So basically, you do give it a acid etch for 2 to 3 seconds. And then you put it into the electrical solution and let that stay in there. And if you need it brighter, you put a little brightening in there, 1/2 teaspoon at a time. Then the plating time, 20 minutes for most applications, 30 minutes for highly corrosive applications. Then after that, you dip it in the chromate. But first, it says immerse in muriatic acid, rinse, and then rinse again, and then in the chromate. So we've got that, and this is something you can refer to. Okay, I am about ready to dip it in the solution. We've got a temperature of about 140, maybe even 150. All right. So just dip them right in there. There's no current going through this process. It's just basic degreasing. And I'm going to put all these, if I can, this spatula out of the way. Put all these on one side because I've got this huge run of washers. Gosh, I don't even know if that's going to fit. It'll just fit in that tub. So there we go. And now I have a timer. So 7 minutes. All right, timer just went off. So we take out, and I've got all the rinses down below here. And I've got them labeled, but I'm going to turn them around so I know what they are. Acid, zinc, chromate. Okay, so you take it out, you rinse it, dip it in the acid, 2-3 seconds, and it's not really doing much of anything on the acid end of it there. And lay it. Do a little bit of checking on it once we get them all in. So once we're all in, and now I have it all in this, the bath, the zinc bath, and I played with the voltage and the amperage. Now the voltage is pretty much, starts out at 20 volts, but when you're pulling it through all of this, I guess it drops down. It's like 1.46, and it's the amps that really put the plating on. So you have to unplug. There's a little aquarium pump in there to rotate and to circulate the fluid. I don't know if you can see it kind of moving around the top. You have to unplug that, and then you just kind of look at how the bolts. There should be a little bubbling, just a little bit of. You can see it working, and if you're not getting that, then you need to up the amperage. But all in all, I think it just takes a little longer. You know, it's not, there's no perfect solution because every time you put a bolt in there, one more bolt than last time, well, it's going to change. It's just a matter of how long it takes for it to plate. And I can already see that that is already plating. You can see that right on there, and that's already starting to plate. So it's I got it set pretty good. Probably a little high, maybe. Yeah, you can see the plating's getting there. So we got 20 minutes or so in there. It may even be shorter because they are really getting plated quick. Here's the reading. And you use this dial to turn up or down. And if you press in 3 times, then you can really turn it up. But I'm finding about 3 amps. And as you see, the voltage is about 20 volts, but it drops down to like 1.3 volts. So there is what I'm doing. And I'm doing this for me as much as you, so I've got a place to come back to. And we're still waiting for our 20 minutes. I wanted to show you, now we're roughly halfway through the plating process. And look at that. That is, I mean, I think that's probably plated at this point. But we're going to give it the full amount of time. Nothing wrong with putting a good plating on there, but if it starts to turn a little dark, then I'm putting it in too long. All right, I'm going to take them out. It's a little early. Been in there 20 minutes, but they're plated. So first thing is lift off the lid of the acid and the chromate. And so let's go with the single bolt first. And this is into the zinc plating rinse a couple times. Into the acid for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And to the acid rinse. And then into the blue chromate. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Maybe a little longer. Give it maybe 10 seconds. Okay, and then into the chromate rinse. Now, what happens is this is nice right now, but it will look better when it dries, believe it or not. So I'll do the rest of these. So rinse of the zinc rinse, which is just distilled water. All these rinses are just distilled water, but you don't share the rinses. Give that a little, give that 3 or 4 seconds there. Rinse. And are they shiny or what? And blue chromate, we're going to give this a 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. Yeah, I like that better. And rinse. Look at the Suzuki emblem on these OEM bolts. That's another reason that you do your own plating. Now the big load of washers. See, there we go. putting this for about 20 seconds in the blue chromate. And I believe that's the good time at this point. And there is a lot of brand new bolts and washers. Oh, it's gonna look so pretty. So there's the difference between a plated and a somewhat clean. I mean, that screw, when you're looking at it without the camera, or this washer, it doesn't look all that bad until you put it next to something that's been plated. So there they are. It's all the engine bolts, and they're ready to put back in the bag, ready for the engine. Now I'm up to 2 batches, and one thing I'm finding out is the brightener is a big deal. These were really almost as gray as these, but I could tell they were plated, but they were just dull. And I poured in a little of the brightener, and I could see the silver just showing up, it just going from one end to the other. So now I'm going to give this a little additional time to cover completely with the brightener, and move on to the next batch of parts. I'm seeing that about 3.6 on the amps to maybe 3.9 or 4 is kind of the range. The experiment I'm doing now is with the spokes. And what I'm doing is, everything I read says don't let them hit the bottom. But how in the heck are you going to suspend the spokes unless you do them one at a time, which I'm not going to do one at a time, or maybe I'll have to. And then I group together all of the, basically the nuts. And they had a little surface rust on them. I'm going to see if this bath is going to take that off. So, another experiment. We'll see if hitting the bottom, probably it makes more difference here in the electrical bath, but we'll see. And here is a single spoke. You can see it's kind of somewhat dark. Rinse that. Put it in the acid. Rinse it. And lay it in here. We'll see how that goes compared to the group of spokes right here. Boy, that bubbled in the acid there a little. Some contamination still on there a little bit. And now, put them in here. Now I'm going to try make sure that they don't touch the metal plates, of course. And I'm going to have to do that with both hands. Well, I don't want to bore everybody with all this plating, but it is kind of fun. And the results, are just awesome. It's like getting a whole box of parts. Genuine Suzuki parts in a box. But I'm going to show you one last experiment. This arm is for the brake. And it's, you can't find it. It's unobtainium, so I wire wheeled it, which I've done in the past. That's all I've done, and I just, cleans up the threads, makes it look shiny. But you wash the bike a couple times and you're going to start to see corrosion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and do a 2-stage. I'm going to put it in the bath half at a time. Put it in the bath half at a time here. And then I may not chromate it, just because that might just add to kind of a line in the middle. But let's just see what happens. I put a small hole in here so I could get most of one side in the solution. Now I did this side, it came out really nice. But I want to show you something that has happened with this last batch, and this is just the way it goes. Look at the difference. Something happened. Something happened here. Either I think what may have happened is these are hollow tubes, and I couldn't clean inside, and there's corrosion. There was corrosion inside, and maybe that contaminated. But look at the grayness. So compared to the shininess, really sucks. But that's the way it goes. And so I think I've got to put in some metal into the solution and let it suck up all the impurities. So I'm going to start there. Okay, I had to get away from the plating. It's not going well. I got almost everything plated, but I've still got a handful of spokes and other things, and it's not coming out good. So I'm going to shift gears, and we're going to put the bearings on the steering stem. We've got a bearing installation tool. We'll get that laid up nice. And we just give it a little persuasion. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up getting really close, and I'm going to have to center that. These are not exactly probably the right fit. All right, well, this seal's centered up real nice. So I've got to just pack these bearings. It's the next thing to do. So, should have done this before, but I'll pack it. I'll get it all packed in there, but it would have been much easier had I done this before I mounted the bearing. All right, so they're all packed. Just get a little bit of the residue off of this nice, clean, black triple tree. And move on to the rest of the steering stem bearing. Okay, I've got the race is up inside here, and I pulled it up a little bit, but I wanted to show you how this tool works. Basically, you line up, it's got a bunch of fittings that you can choose from, and that's this ring right here, and they're beveled to fit whatever race you might have. There's 5 or 6 of these. So you fit the one that fits in there right, and then you slide this up and give it a good turn, and I try to line it up as good as possible up here. It's going to line itself up down here, but I like to get it kind of in the center so it's pulling. And it centers itself a little bit there. And then you turn. Now it didn't take much. Usually it's a lot more than this, but it's all centered. Now see, I'll wipe this off and give you an idea where it's sitting. Let's see if I can bring this. And it should focus. So you can see, turn a light on it, that it is seated. Typically this is a conversion, so this is typically a ball bearing style, and this is a retrofit of a a needle bearing, roller bearing sort of setup. So if it was originally this, you'd probably have this race a little further up in, but there it is, installed. Now we'll do the top in reverse order. Put a little bit of grease, help it slide in there. And you can see the lip right there is not very deep. So this is going to still probably ride up above the frame here. Now there wasn't a shim. This was the smallest shim, and it worked on the bottom race, but there isn't a smaller one. So this is an awfully small top bearing. So I just used the tool itself because they're going in so easy. It's like they only go in. You could tap them in with probably a plastic hammer, but here it is. And that's it, right there. It's in there. And you can see that it's bottomed. You can see a little, kind of a little line, a bubble of oil, of grease that kind of spewed out when it hit. And it's centered, so it's nice. Get a little bit of that grease off, and that's top and bottom race. So what we've got here is we packed the top bearing. We pulled out one of our beautiful plated parts. And we're going to go ahead and install the steering stem. That's up in there. Got the bearing. And the upper seal. Fits like so. And the top nut. Seal to stay. So this is all by feel because this is not the stock system. This is a different conversion to needle bearings. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to kind of give it a little press just to kind of set the bearings and squeeze out any oil that might, the grease that might like be in between the race and the bearings, just to get it to set, I guess you'd call it setting the bearing, and then back it off. And I'd say what I do a lot of times is I'll set it fairly loose, and then I'll ride it, just pushing it around and bouncing it around. It'll tend to settle all in and then become loose. And you can feel it when you're on the bars. You can feel a little bit of like movement, and then I'll go back in and I'll crank it up, you know, just to take the slack out of it. So I think that right there is probably good. Yeah, that I feel. There's a little resistance, but not much. And I'm going to go with that. In an attempt to figure out why the stuff is coming out dark gray, I've looked all over online. One suggestion was to filter through coffee filters the solution, the electroplating solution, which they called whatever you put in batteries, electrolyte. So I'm doing that, and then I cleaned the plates. They were all gray, and I cleaned them with a little bit of steel wool and warm water. So we're going to try those two steps first. Well, I think I found what is happening, and I'm pretty sure that it wasn't the fluid was dirty, although it sure looks a much. Doesn't it look better? What it was I was putting not enough current. So what I did is I turned off the little aquarium pump, and then I turned the electricity up. I turned the current up till I started to see the little air bubbles kind of like just kind of bubbling off of the bolt. And then turn the air or the aquarium pump back on, and all of a sudden now it's wanting to, you know, just plate perfectly. So that's just a error that I might pass along to anyone else. Well, I'm still having problems plating. I thought I figured it out yesterday, and I cleaned everything up real nice, but I think another problem I'm having is I'm not dipping the rinse. I get excited and I just pull them out of the degreaser and throw them in here, and I think I did that on one set of these, although both sets seem to be blackening, you know. So the power was turned down probably too much for too long, which gave it an initial black color to it. And then when I turned it up, some areas got silver, but it couldn't overcome the black that had already developed. So I'm going to just keep trying and experimenting. I have it at the max right now, and I think that might be too much because I've loaded this tub up with stuff and had it at 4.8 or something, and you know, they came out good. I don't know, you know, it's the way it goes, I guess, with this plating. So the spokes are giving me problems. You can see there's some shiny parts, and then there's some gray parts. Now, I polished up these. They say you can polish them, and I can see how, and maybe I can re-dip them in chromate. So I'll massage and play with them, but I'm going to try fewer, like maybe 3 spokes at a time. Maybe the current isn't traveling right. I'm sure it's just got to get the amperage right. All right, so I do 3 spokes here. I also did the acid rinse and the acid dip prior to putting them in, and I've got this at what I would think is a pretty high current at 3.0. But boy, they just automatically started to plate and shine, so that's encouraging. Now look at those. So it's definitely, you have to wire them on both sides. to keep them elevated, and the power level was at, well, I'm going to do another round here. I'm going to try 4 this time. So it's set at 31. It was at 28, 2.8, and now it's at 3.1 because I added 1 spoke. So I upped it a little, but again, immediately they start to plate and shine. Right, I had a conversation with Caswell, and amazing, they just picked up. But that's kind of been how it's been with them. I rarely wait long times before you can talk to them, and I haven't had to talk to them much. But so, computing the surface area is my problem. I need to get a handle on that, so that's the next thing. But I keep dropping the amperage down, and I'm getting better and better results. But I'm sure I'll get down to that point where it starts to get gray and black again. So just got to learn how to compute surface area. Well, I continue to struggle with the spokes. And even with other pieces now, I dropped the voltage. I kept dropping it and dropping it. And what I got spokes to shine, but the plating was a little rough. You know, I probably could just go with it, but I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out why or where, and I know that, I don't know if you can see the roughness in there. So I'm going to keep figuring it out. And this is the gray I'm talking about. Just dull and gray compared to a shiny spoke that, for some reason, these spokes here I did with other pieces. So I may have to load up the tank with other, items. I don't know. There's going to be a trick for spokes, and I'm going to find it out. I've got another batch ready to go. Something is just really tough with these spokes. So I found that maybe a little deeper in the solution is helping. But other than that, I'm just continuing to experiment. All right, that I found, and I've actually done one with 2 electrodes. I've done 3 or 4 with 1-sided electrode, and they've actually hit the bottom of the pan when they're in the bath, and that didn't seem to make a difference. But they're coming out nice now. They're really coming out good. And all I can say is it's just voltage and probably cleanliness. I'm going to live with these. They've got a little line on them from the wire being on the middle. I tried putting the electrode on the middle. So what I'm finding is this is probably the best way. Just twist it around the area that's going to go on the hub, and that leaves everything else open for plating. So I'm just going to continue plating till I get everything done. Now I have been totally frustrated with the plating, so I'm going to go on with the build itself. We're going to start with the swing arm. I've got all the pieces here. I'm going to clean up this bolt and the shaft a little. This is chrome plated, so I'm not going to plate it. So if you see rubber that has, it's almost like dirt has been on it for so long that it's just yellow, and it just almost is a layer, a coating that won't come off. There's 1,001 uses for a Brillo pad. All right, I'm not done with this, but you can see that dirt? Now, look at that. There's a little spot right there where I didn't get, and I'm going to get in here too, but you can see how that restores the rubber. It probably takes a little of the rubber off, but it brings it right down to newer rubber, and when you dress it out with go-go juice, it'll look great. And there's all the pieces laid out for the swing arm. So I used the wheel bearing, West Marine wheel bearing grease. It doesn't matter. I wanted to just make sure, I don't know if you can see down in there. There's the red grease. Just wanted to make sure the Zerk worked, and then I got grease in it. Cleaned up the bushings. It's threaded through. Don't forget the bracket that holds the brake light switch, which goes right in between the bolt and the frame. Then you've got your washer inside, your little cup washer, and then an O-ring. And then you've got the rubber chain guard or chain guide with another washer, O-ring, and another one of these like bucket washers with an external washer and the nut. Plenty of grease. Got all the center stand pieces together. I put the swing arm up and out of the way with a zip tie here. So, and then I raised the rear with the support apparatus that I've got made there. So I can have access real clean to the beautiful Suzuki bolts. Nuts and bolts, genuine Suzuki. So I'll put these on and then install the spring. Now that the center stand and swing arm are on, we're going to move to the forks. So the first thing to do is remove this screw and drain the fork leg. We got the impact. Now I already popped it off, but that's all I had to do. There we go. That's lucky. A lot of times they don't come out. And just slide it all out. And there's a snap ring in here, a washer, and then the seal. Now I'm pretty lucky on these forks. I have an RD over there, and it's not so lucky. This is the area where the forks and the fork seal slides. So if all this pitting here was down here, then that wouldn't be a good thing. And so what I'm going to do, seeing as that this is all beautiful, is I'm just going to take care of some of this rust here with a little steel wool and a little bit of just light cleaner, and just get the surface rust off of it. And it comes off pretty easy. And then I'm going to work it all the way around and then polish it with a little bit of chrome polish. And that's all I'm going to need to do to these fork legs. You know, there's probably a place you could get this re-chromed, and I'm still looking for a chrome plater because I've got quite a few pieces on this bike I really would like to chrome, but I'm not going to go crazy and go like to Sacramento or something like that. So let's get this cleaned up, and then we're going to move on to, we're going to remove the seal, we're going to clean this tube, clean all this stuff up, and then we're going to polish this tube after we lightly sand it. I'll show you how that works. And there it is. A little bit of chrome cleaner, a little bit of steel wool, and she's ready to go. What I did is I put this in a vise. I didn't really clamp it down too much. As you can see, I've got the seal is out, but it was in there pretty tight. And I can see that that's kind of like oblonged a little bit, just a hair I had to get in there with this seal puller and basically just get in there and really, it took a lot more than I thought, but it's out. Now I go over how I do my fork tubes pretty well in previous videos. My goal, and I'm just going to go through it kind of quickly on this one. My goal is to have, if you see, you probably can't see in the camera, but there's pitting on this. And at one point, a lot of these had a clear plastic coating that pretty much is gone. But you can see some pitting, but you also see machine marks. There's like a machine marks that, I want to say scratches that run along the tube here in this particular angle. And so what I'm doing here is I'm sanding with 400 first to try and get as much of the pitting out as possible in the areas you're going to see. Back here, I'm not too concerned, but in the front, I want it pretty clear. And you don't have to get all the way down because, some of the pitting's pretty deep. So, this thing's gonna just blow up and shine in your face once you start polishing. But to get the majority of this off prior to polishing, sanding, it's a great way to do it. So I start with 400, I go to probably 800, then maybe 1,000. And once I've got to about 1,000, maybe 1,200, then I'm ready to polish it. So that's the 400. And now I'm sanding with the 800, and I can see right away that even though it showed on the 400, it showed some pitting, still a little bit of pitting. By the time we get to 1,000 grit, from 800 to 1,000 or even 1,200, we're not going to see, there won't be any pitting. And it just keeps getting kind of brighter and brighter. And that's the end of the 800. On to 1,000 or 1,200. And there it is, after 1,000. And all the pitting on the face and all that glue or whatever you want to call it, the coating, the yellowish coating, that plastic coating that they had put on the forks, it's all gone, down to metal or aluminum and ready for polish. Well, it's been a long battle with the spokes. And there's the new set, and there's the old set. So now we need to go on to the hub. I'm also working on the fork at the same time, which you've already seen. But I'm just going to play around with the inside. The inside, actually, you can't see it in the camera, but it has a nice blue hue. I'm actually kind of liking it the way it is. It looks more factory. Now, I definitely am going to do more like this. This is what I've got to deal with here. This is just from a little hand polishing, and that may be all I'm going to do. I don't want it looking like it's been polished. Sometimes it just gets so darn shiny that it doesn't look right. It doesn't look stock, especially when you can't get in here. I mean, I've got some small polishers that could get in there, but the look I'm after is stock. So that's what it looks like before, and that's after. That's just down in here. You can't tell, but it is much bluer. See how it's starting to take on a more of a shine, but not. If that's dulled and corroded, that's got a little bit and that's about as far as I want to go there. And what I do is I'm using a Dremel tool with these little wheels that I bought. So I bought these wheels, they polish, and I'm using a little bit of this. So I'm just getting inside the tight spaces. So I have some parts coming. I am going to continue on with the front wheel, but now is the time to try and assess the chrome. And there's a lot of problems here with the chrome that just polishing's not going to help. So I did find a chrome plater, and I'm going to give them a try. So far this is the pile that's going to go. And the rear fender, although it's not perfect, I'm gonna live with. You have to figure out the value of the motorcycle. If this was like an H1 or H2 Kawasaki triple two-stroke, that's worth anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 finished, well then, you're probably going to send everything to plating. But this is a 1974 Suzuki 185 Adventurer. Now that's what they call this, is an Adventurer. But just because it has a fancy name doesn't mean that it's worth a heck of a lot of money. I don't know exactly what the value probably is. I don't think anyone does, because when's the last time you saw a 185 Adventurer? So I'm going to cut it short on the chrome. I'm going to take what I can polish, and I'm going to send out the stuff that is just not going to come out. And here's what I come up with. Quite a few parts, but they're small, so hopefully the cost isn't going to be too much. We'll just have to see. This is more of an experiment on how much chroming is cost. How much the cost is going to be as opposed to the value. The fenders, they'll shine up, they are pitted, and the chain guard that's pitted, the rear brake lever, it's pitted, but some of these things are just, I try to wire wheel it, and it would work, especially this one, and I haven't really even gone over it with hand polishing or on the polisher, but I'm just gonna send this all and see what the price tag is. So that goes out today. A couple of dozen Q-tips, brake cleaner to get the holes, and the polishing is done. I ordered these Sunday night, and here it is Tuesday morning, and they're here from Rocky Mountain. So I've got the tubes, and I've got the rubber band that goes to protect the tube from the spokes. So I'm about ready to start lacing up the wheel. So a little bit of elbow grease, and the rim looks pretty good. I'm going to probably polish it one more time after I've got the spokes and everything on the tire and everything, but I try to get as clean as I can, because you can get in here better when you don't have the spokes to contend with. So there are two different kinds of spokes, and this is what I've found typically. You can see one has a real sharp right hand bend, and the other one's an angle. So what you've got is, this is the sharp. So the inside, so if the end of the spoke is on the inside of the hub, it's the sharp edge. And then this is the, if you can see it there, that's the angled. And that goes in from the outside. And so every other one So let's just say this is your angled spoke. Goes in, it goes in from the outside, and the heel, you might call it, is on the outside. Every other one. All the way around. Then the trick is to have pictures when it was pulled apart. And as you can see, I find the reference, which is the casting line. And so we have one different spoke here, one different here. And they split the difference down here. So this will be an angled, and this will be a sharp right-hand turn. So you just have to pick up where you are here and put that in reference to these two. So if this one's, let's just say that's an outie and this is an innie. Well, this is an innie and that's an outie. So this casting line kind of splits the difference of these two. So that's a outie and an innie. And this is an innie and an outie. And it's because this is upside down. If this was flipped over, the hub was flipped over, then you'd see the heel of this one, and you'd see the full spoke on that. So I think you kind of get the idea. And with a lot of fussing, there it is. And this is the spokes that I plated. So you can see they're going to look fine. All right, I got it pretty close. I'll just spin it up here. Now the right-hand side has a dent in it, and I'm not going to be able to do anything about that. But if I can hold the camera straight, if you look at the left, there's really no hop. And the only thing that comes through, and I've marked it with a black line, that is where they join the rim together at the factory. You can see it right there. So that's going to have like a little blip. You can look down here. And it's just a little blip when it goes around. That's really all I can do. See, I'll give it another spin. But that's close enough for government work. Now in Shingletown, they would actually make the rim really bowed so that it would look cool when it's rolling down the road. You know, the back wheel would go like this. Then they'd giggle and laugh. You know, the more they could get it to go, they'd give it, you know, that big giggle, that Shingletown giggle and laugh as they're going down the road. And it doesn't do anything bad until you hit a turn. I'm trying to do more before and afters. It's hard because you have to do it before you start. But so this is the rear wheel, which looked pretty much like the front wheel. So this is before and after. Quite a difference. This is a nice little Michelin tire too. And here's another before. Take a look at all the condition of everything. And after. So I'm done polishing the fork tube. Came out real nice. So now it's time to put that fork back together. So I've got all the parts for these forks. Using my sheet, made sure I got the right ones by double crossing over these numbers here, right here, bottom bolt, fork, O-ring. So I got to dig that one out. So the first thing is we need to put the seal in. Now I put the seal in so far just by aligning it and just tapping it. It didn't take much to put it in. But now what I've got to do is I've got to find the correct socket and then give it a little persuasion. Just a little at a time. I'm not going to hurry it till it's seated. And as you can see, it's moving on in, but there's a lip down here that it's going to press against. There's a little area there, and I believe that actually the snap ring goes, first it's this washer, then the snap ring. So I've got it in all the way. I know I'm in all the way. I was thinking I had to actually go down in here. You can't really see it, but way down here, but no. And it's always good to leave the other one together so you can look, because a picture's worth 1,000 words and a video's worth 1,000 pictures. So this is where the snap ring goes, right off the top here with the washer underneath it. So we put the washer on. The snap ring ought to go in pretty damn easy. And that's it. Snap ring's on. Seal is in. So this is seal and O-ring grease. All right, so we've got the seal pretty greased up, and I'm going to also put some right on here on my beveled edge, and then we're going to slide it in. Now with motocross forks, they're totally different. The upside down forks and all this is so old school. This is all you do. Just set it, line it, kind of work it in, and there it is. Now it's bottomed. Sure it moves in and out freely. You can hear it hit bottom. And we're going to get our brand new crush washer. And we should be able to thread it right in there. So typically this will not allow for you to tighten this up. It's like it'll spin inside, and so what happens is you've got to pull the cap and then put a dowel in or something to stop the bottom piston and the threaded area this screws into from spinning. Or you can use a impact and just give it a pop pop, you know, and that should do it. But this is tightening up nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check for the torque, then I'm going to guess, and I'll probably put a screwdriver through here so I can really get something on it. All right, so now it's time to fill it up. We're going to fill it with a specific amount of oil, 125 cc's. And I've got that measured out here. And it calls for 1030 motor oil. So there we go. And all these old bikes, you know, it's not all that technical. Oh, look at that. I didn't put the drain plug in. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so I think that I can guesstimate how much oil came out of that, and that it's not the end of the world if one fork's got a little more or a little less than the other. You know, probably plenty of people will ring in and say, oh my gosh, it's not safe. It's not safe. You've got too much oil in one side or not enough in the other, or they're uneven. Well, it's a TS180 or a GT185. I don't think it matters. So I'm putting in let's see, I'm putting in about 25 cc's. I think that's probably what squirted out of that hole. There you go. Put that in your pipe and smoke it there in Shingletown. And there it is. Not only does the workbench have a little bit of suspension to it, so does this fork. All right, now the dust seal. And I'll get that all the way on there. There we go. And there it is. Our front fork. All rebuilt, ready to go. And there they are, done. Well, I keep plugging along, and what I've done here is I use the metal polish cream. It's the same as the McGuire's. And anyhow, I use this tip on my moto tool. And as you can see, I polished up, got these kind of polished, right? Well, I didn't like the polished look. I want it to look new, not polished. And so what I found were these are like a, you know, a Scotch-Brite on a tip of a moto tool, and watch what it does. It's given me a different look, not a polished look. So it's really kind of a breakthrough. And when you get down in here into the fins, I'm going to have this top head looking totally different than the cylinders, which is like a new look. Just polishing them up, I don't like that shiny polished look on the head. I'm going to do that on the back, or on these cases, these case covers. I'm going to polish those on the wheel. Those look good polished, but this head wasn't polished when it was new. It was just a bright aluminum look. And I got in here, I got all these fins. They were really corroded, and they just made them pop out and look new. And I've still got more work to do, but let me see if I can find one that, this is kind of, I've actually gotten in there and done a lot already, but you can see that yellowy stuff in there. Well, it was all over. And then this is cleaned out. It's not polished. And once it's washed, or even if I wiped it down with a little bit of lacquer thinner or something, I think it'll just turn to kind of a new dull aluminum. That's more of what I was dealing with the fins right there. All the fins looked like that. So then I tried to polish, which I didn't like. And now I've just got these Scotch-Brite pads on here. You can see it's really taking on a different look from the cylinder. All right, I got the head where I like it. Now it's time to sand the side covers, starting with the alternator cover. So I thought I would do a little segment here just real quick to show the difference between just the first sanding and how much of that old scratches and corrosion comes out. And I'm using the 400. I've been using a squirt bottle with the towel underneath. It's working really well instead of the bucket. But look at the difference. Look at the difference. And I sanded pretty good, but I mean, it's not like, of course, I guess for me, it's easy, but it's really not that difficult. It doesn't take all that much time, but you'll be working on this. Just to give you an idea, to clean this in the parts washer with all of the stuff that was around the chain that was baked on, it took me 2 hours. And you can see a few little scratches in there because you just got to get in there with a screwdriver, and there's still little pieces I got to get out. But I'll do the same with this. We'll sand it, but I just wanted to show you the difference between what it's like originally, and you almost could buff that right now. Now here it is after I have sanded it with the 220, no, excuse me, the 400, and then $800. So that's what it looks like. It's nice and bright and shiny, and all the corrosion's off. All right, so I put it on the polisher, and you can see I've got brown written on it because I don't mix up my wheels. So I got a wheel there. This is what I got for brown left. I've got quite a bit down here still. So I put it on the wheel. This is just a Harbor Freight polishing wheel. Then I cleaned it off with lacquer thinner. Just wiped it down with a paper towel. And you probably could do it with a towel too. Then I went over it with a metal polish cream and polished it up. And that brought it out. Now I did a little chrome polish on one spot, but it didn't really make a difference after the metal polish. So here is the before and after. There's before, and there's after. Think that'll look good on that motor? I do. And I was able to save the Suzuki emblem. It was just taped over. I just taped it over, but it was really in good shape. And I found a brand new emblem, but if you can do it without, why not? So now I've got to do the same thing on this one. I've got the stripes ordered, and this is about the best time to end this segment. I'm waiting for parts, and it's going to be a little while. I could get this rear wheel finished if I had the tire. So I'm waiting on the tire there. I'm also waiting on new solution for the bath here. This is the Electrolyte Bath, and I can't do any more nuts and bolts. They come out okay. I put too much acid in the bath to neutralize or lower the pH. So now the pH is down to like 1. It should be at around 6. And so the way you reduce it is you put in a little bit of the muriatic acid. Same acid that I've been using for dipping the parts. And the first little bit I put in didn't do much, so I put in a lot more. And they said just put a little at a time. So anyway, Caswell is sending me a new bath here, the part A and B, and I got 2 new plates coming, and I got some more degreaser. So that's going to be like a week, and that's holding me up too. I really want to start a whole new segment of bolts in the shaker, but I can't because I'm waiting for that. So we're at a point where I've got the motor cleaned, got every bit of dirt off it, and I'm polishing, and I've got the points cover and that alternator cover. It's polished, and so there's really nothing left for me to do for about a week. So I'm just going to leave it at this, and all those guys in Shingletown will have something to look at this weekend. So Joe, enjoy, have a nice weekend, and we'll see you on the next video.